Hey buddy, hope you're traveling well. See, I'm not buying this and unboxing it and writing a review here. So I've traveled with this for like what, 30,000 kilometers, and I've taken the GoPro from a -30 in Ladakh to a +50 in Rajasthan. I think I've been using the GoPro starting from the GoPro 8 and then 9. 8 and 9 I've owned them, and I've used the GoPro Hero 10 extensively. First, let's look at what this one is good at and then we'll roast it. Back in 2014, the word action cameras wasn't familiar with many people. There was no niche called the action camera back then, because whenever people talked about a video camera, it was these huge cameras, or some DSLRs were capable of shooting videos. For example, I bought a brand new D750 full frame Nikon in 2014, and it could shoot 1080p, that is HD at 30 fps, and that's as far as it can go. But then one of my friend got a GoPro. It was a GoPro 4, and it could shoot the same thing at 60 fps, and then it was like this small. Back at that time, GoPro was pretty much the first company to create a niche called action cameras, because before that we never imagined that we could self-shoot a video while we were riding a bike, or while we were swimming, or while we were jumping off a cliff on a bungee dive. This little thing can shoot 4K videos at 60 fps. I mean, a few years back, people wouldn't have believed it. So it was basically GoPro that actually created a niche called action cameras. See, an action camera is a small, sturdy camera which can take a lot of beating, that you can self-record while you are in the middle of an action. And 10 years back, this was a whole new concept. And year on year, there were more and more people who got a GoPro strapped down to their helmets, and it became synonymous with moto vlogging. So this is a GoPro Hero 9. I got it like 3 years back, and I still use it. And I didn't have the need to move to a GoPro 10, 11, 12, or today 13. Even today, the best thing I love about this camera is I can just strap it onto my helmet, and I press this little button here. It starts recording in the last settings that I had. Generally, it's at 4K 30 fps is what I shoot when I'm on a motorcycle, and it just records it, and then all I have to do is press this button again and it stops recording. So it's like an action camera like a GoPro actually allows you to focus more on the action than recording it. These days you can use a mobile phone to do all these things, but I really don't think motovlogging, or what we would otherwise do with an action camera, can be done with mobile phones today, even though mobile phones have come a long way. Fine. If a GoPro can do so much, why am I largely unhappy with this? Or why am I telling I would never buy another GoPro in my life again, nor I would suggest anyone to buy anyone? So let's start with the most annoying, most put-in problem in pretty much every single GoPro that we know of. See, I had a GoPro 8, I'm holding a GoPro 9, and I see people telling the same thing about a 10, 11, and 12. I don't know much about 13, so can't comment on it. See, the biggest problem with the GoPro is the classic GoPro freeze. If you've used a GoPro for more than, let's say, a year, or made a trip completely relying on GoPro, you know what I mean. And this is what it is. There is a spectrum of things in which the freeze happens. See, sometimes it just freezes and you just get the audio, which happens with my GoPros most of the times. And sometimes you have a split screen and it goes with two different screens in a weird way, and then it freezes again. And the third thing is it flickers and flashes, and then you have a blank screen. This might seem to be not a big problem. Let me take you through what happens. See, what you see here, it's ASO. See, that was the first time I made it to the lake, and even today most people don't know such a lake exists in Ladakh. What annoys the most is, see, you dream about going to a place for years, and then finally you are there, and then you want to record it and make a video out of it. But when you come back to see that the video has frozen where you started, that's what hurts the most. See, it's basically the unreliability that torments us. See, you make a trip, goes as far as Ladakh or Spiti or Zanskar, and then the camera freezes and you don't know where it has frozen. See, the biggest problem is when you're exploring a place, when you're venturing into a place. So the whole point of an action camera is that an action camera is supposed to let you focus on the action than recording it. But all the time when you're constantly worried if this thing is going to record it or not, then the whole feel of going to the place is lost. That's number one. See, for example, take a look at this video. So this is the Kilar Kishtwar cliffhanger, and for a very long time this was the most dangerous road in the world, and now the government has closed the road because it was so dangerous. See, when you are on a motorcycle to such a road, and a few seconds after you start recording, you're so focused on the road which could probably kill you, and trust that this camera records it, and at the end of the journey you come back home to see none of it was recorded. It beats the whole purpose, and that is the biggest problem with most GoPros. In fact, later on I began to realize that's the biggest problem with most action cameras in general. See, this freeze is not only in GoPro. All action cameras have these. The DJI Osmo, the Insta360, all of them have it. Some are better in it, some are worse in it. Unfortunately, GoPro seems to be the worst in it, even though they had a head start before anyone. There is a reason to it. Let's say I'm shooting a 4K 30 FPS video. See, one 4K 30 FPS video in my GoPro 9, which lasts for 10 minutes, it's a little over 1 GB. For convenience, let's take it's like 1200 MB. So what the camera does is, see, light falls on your sensor, the sensor records it, and then it gets transferred to the processor, and then the processor, it processes the image and then converts it into a digital alternative, and then it sends it to your memory card. See, all these things happen every microsecond from the time you start recording till you stop recording. So what happens is, so every second the camera goes through this entire process, which in turn tells that and it has to transfer about 2 MB every second, starting from the sensor to writing it on your card. All these are being done at such a fast rate, and a tiny camera like GoPro, see, forget about a tiny camera like the GoPro. Even if you are shooting a 10-minute video on a full-frame DSLR, it does get heated. I logically cannot think of a solution for it, because otherwise at least one of these companies would have fixed it. And this problem gets enhanced as the size of the camera becomes smaller, because the heating is more. So what happens is, at one point of time, when the temperature of the device gets to a particular thing, it has to stop. Otherwise, you have the risk of the battery blowing up, or the camera itself blowing up, or some crucial circuits inside it blowing up. See, is there a solution for it? Yes, you can go around it, but then there is no direct solution for it. See, you cannot buy a GoPro or a DJI Osmo, start recording and run it for like what, 30-40 minutes and expect it not to freeze. It will eventually happen. The second problem is obviously, as you would have guessed, overheating. Actually, the freeze is a derivative of overheating in most cases. See, the 60 to 70 minutes battery life is basically the theoretical thing. It's not always that. See, for example, if you're moto vlogging in Khardungla, the battery life is close to what is being promised. On the other hand, if you're riding in very bright, sunny, hot, humid days, what happens is the battery life comes down. See, what is supposed to be 60 to 70 minutes comes down drastically to 30 to maybe 40 minutes. And your battery drains proportional to the heat that you are in. So, and the risk of freezing is directly proportional to the temperature in which you are already in. See, these things are interlinked with each other, and in most cases what you want to do is just push the start button, forget about the camera, and then focus on your thing. This is what an action camera is supposed to do in the first place, where it lets you focus more on the action than recording the action. But then, as you get used to a GoPro, you'll psychologically be tuned to constantly keep thinking about whether the camera is recording it or not, and that sort of destroys the whole fun part in doing the adventure or motor vlogging or doing anything else. So that's the second problem, overheating. The third problem is the image quality. See, I'm used to full frame DSLRs, and I'm not stupid enough to compare a $5,000 gear with a $500 gear. I think nowadays it's a $350 gear. You can get a good GoPro like what, 33,000 on Amazon. I'm not comparing a GoPro with a full frame camera, but then see, GoPro had an advantage because, as I told earlier, they were the ones who created the niche, and when other players like DJI and Insta360 came into the picture, they already had an advantage. But the problem is they did not do anything about it. What eventually happened is they let the people who came into the market overtake them, and now GoPro, with respect to reliability, stands at the bottom, and the other players have not only caught up with them, they've overtaken them. See, I'm not talking about any particular brand because I still use the GoPro, and I'm not very inclined to buying another action camera until this one dies out completely. See, if you are buying one today, it's always better to go to the best deal rather than buying one just because of it belongs to a certain brand and then getting unhappy with it, trying another newer version, and finally moving it to another brand. So me personally, as long as this GoPro 9 is going to be alive, I'm going to live with it, and then I'm not going to buy another GoPro ever in my life, nor suggest anyone to buy one. But that said, is the DJI Osmo or the Insta360 flawless? No, I won't think so. I have friends who use them and they also have their complaints, but looks like as of today, as of 2024, Insta360 and DJI are more reliable than what a GoPro is, and I don't know what 13 does, but when you use 4 generations of a camera and when you have friends using all these 4 generations and they are largely unhappy with it, you obviously would want to advise against it, and that is what it is. In the early 20s and in 2019 and 18, GoPro came up with this image stabilization, which was like phenomenal in those times, because you run your bike at high speed on an off-road, and then the camera records it fairly smooth. See, but then 5 years back it was a game changer, but now even mobile phones have caught up, where you keep a GoPro footage and a mobile phone footage side by side, you would hardly make any difference out of it. So next, let's get to image quality. See, I shoot a GoPro and a DJI Mini 2 side by side to record the same scene most of the time, and I have found that the videos out of the DJI Mini 2 drone is far more superior than what I get out of GoPro. And for the record, I shoot both at 4K, both at 30 FPS most of the time, and there is more textural details from the footage that I get from the drone than the GoPro, and it has become so much obvious that these days if I can fly a drone, I'm not even shooting it with a GoPro. So end of the day, you want better image quality, and the problem is even if you are comparing Apple with Apple, let's compare the GoPro with the DJI Osmo. The DJI Osmo has a sensor that is at least 30-35% bigger than the GoPro, and as always, the bigger the sensor, the better the image quality. Even when you compare the GoPro with its competitors, the image quality of a GoPro seems to be a little less. See, the problem is GoPro had a big advantage and a big fan following and such a loyal audience. The problem is they were not loyal to their customers. And if you take their timeline starting from GoPro 4, because GoPro 4 was their most successful model, and it was after the GoPro Hero 4 people started knowing of this brand called GoPro, and I think that was back in 2011. And in these 13 years, they have upgraded their processor just twice, and they have upgraded their sensor thrice. And that said, they had one new GoPro coming out every year, and this gave enough room for others like DJI and Insta360 to catch up with them, and in most cases, overtake them. And the next problem is waterproofing. See, I personally had water enter into a GoPro 8 when I was snorkeling. So, and that's why I had to change to a GoPro 9. And if at all you're looking at scuba diving or snorkeling, never ever put your GoPro underwater without a casing. Always have a casing. See, they say it works till 30 meters, but a good casing is like what, 2,000 rupees to 3,000 rupees at the max. Invest in that, get a casing, don't risk it, because once water enters, then 30 or 35,000 that you pay for a GoPro is gone. See, I live in Chennai, and GoPro service in Chennai is not that great, so you can't keep running behind them, and in most cases you will have to spend a fortune to get it fixed. Instead of that, you can buy a better gear. So if you are planning to take your GoPro underwater, always do so with a casing. Fine, then some of you would have thought this was too much ranting, but that was not the point. See, if you are someone who wants to buy an action camera, the first thing that comes into your mind is a GoPro, and most first time buyers, they don't know these limitations, because unfortunately, people on YouTube, they don't talk about real problems, real issues. They unbox a GoPro and it's like, wow, fantastic, and people go buy it. See, the problem is, I know some of you keep dreaming for years about a Ladakh trip, and you buy a GoPro before you book your flight tickets and go all the way there, and then come back with a frozen video. The biggest problem with the freeze is, most of the time when you look into the screen, it's still running. So you believe that it has been recorded, but then the actual footage is not being written into your SD card, and you come back home only to realize that nothing was recorded. It hurts you big time. And I don't want people to buy something with a huge expectation and cutting a sorry figure at the end of the day. And these are the general problems people face with a GoPro. Fine, if these are the problems, can they be avoided? To a certain extent, your risk can be cut down. See, if you are going to buy an action camera today, I would not suggest a GoPro, definitely, after using it for so many years. See, as of today, DJI seems to have an upper hand for two reasons. Primarily, their image quality seems to be better, and they seem to be more reliable than GoPro when it comes to the freeze and other issues. So it's not to say that DJI is flawless, but I see that it outperforms GoPro as of today in many fronts. That's all it is. If you already have a GoPro, how can you cut down on your damage? There are a few things that you can do. See, the number one thing is, invest in a good SD card, a good high-speed SD card which can write much faster and which is much more reliable. See, for example, I just told you that every second at least 2 MB has to be written onto your SD card, and there is a chance that your SD card might get heated if you prolong it. So get a high-speed SD card, the best in the market. Anyways, you have a camera that costs like 30,000-35,000 rupees, and don't be stingy in getting a cheap SD card. Get a good one. That's number one. And number two is, see, as we saw before, overheating seems to be the primary culprit, and try not to record for anything more than 10 minutes at a stretch. Like, record for 10 minutes, give a gap. Even when you're moto vlogging, every 10 minutes take a break, give 2-3 minutes for your camera to cool down, and then continue recording. You can minimize overheating, which is the primary culprit. And some people have this habit of switching off the display to save more battery. Never do that. Keep it on and keep looking at it whenever possible, because when you have the screen turned off, you will never even know if the camera is still recording or not. So have the screen on. It's not 100% foolproof, but then it reduces your risk by a big margin. So never put your screen on screensaver. And whenever you make a very important footage, let's say for example you're just taking the turn and heading to Kardungla, which means a lot to you. So when you do that, after you stop recording, have a check, because if you check it on the spot, there is always a possibility where you can redo it if it froze. But then if you come back to the room and find the footage is not there, it's not likely that you can go back to the same spot and shoot it again. And the last but not the least tip is, try to shoot at a lower resolution. See, for example, chances of your action camera getting overheated is more when you shoot 4K as compared to when you shoot it at 1080p. And try to record your footage at lower FPS. See, some people go for 5.3K 60 FPS. See, these things, the highest possible setting is also likely to heat your gadget the most. So try to record at least 1 or 2 notches down from what you would ideally think. See, most people, be it on YouTube or in Insta, watch your footage on a mobile screen. In that case, why do you want to risk the entire footage trying to have the maximum image quality? Yes, image quality is extremely important, but when it is that versus risking the footage itself, it's always better to play it safe and shoot 1 or 2 notches down than what you think you need it. See, the biggest problem is companies like GoPro have a big loyal fan base, but the problem is most of the time they end up taking their customers for granted, and most companies, you know, they come into this attitude like, oh, these fools will buy whatever we throw at, and that is what GoPro has done and has paid for. See, at the end of the day, if you're motor vlogging, you need an action camera. See, nowadays you can do it with a cell phone, and I'll give you another tip. See, try not to buy new cameras, try buying a second-hand one. See, for example, you have a lot of people who make one trip to Ladakh, buy a GoPro or something else, and then they never make a trip, and then they sell their gear. See, let's say today you can buy a DJI Osmo or a GoPro brand new for like 30-35,000. You can get a real good one for about 20,000. And I believe I've earned your subscription. And if you want more videos on how to record using an action camera and what to do, how to record footage of motor vlogging and other travel related things, please leave a comment. I'll make more such videos. So travel more, travel safe. See you buddy in another video.